Hi guys, the name is Mark, and effectively we're just going to take a couple of looks at a couple of little things here. And again, we're back to a government page. I'm just trying to keep this simple. I know I'm repeating things, but it's so people will understand this. And obviously everything the government does, they deal with certificates, birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, divorce certificates. So it works like this. This government, we've established what a certificate is, and on this page here it says certificate, Black's Law 2, it says a written assurance. There's been an assurance here, and in a second we're going to describe a bond, and this is the assurance right here. That's the written assurance. Is that nice seal with Judith M. Hartman. So she's the Deputy Register General. Okay, so now it says a written assurance or official representation that some act has or has not been done, or some event occurred, or some legal formality been complied with. Your parents rocked up to the hospital, they had to comply with a legal formality in form. This is the form, to be exact, all-eyed tie. And they're even saying that they had to do the same thing. They had to recognize / register an event. And then it says particularly some written assurance made or is issuing from some court. So that tells you that these are court seals and stuff like that when you get things certified. So basically that makes the court clerk basically a common law justice. Now, and what we're going to do here, we're going to read another word here. So everything you see, now you know what's going on. You know what certificates are. You know that the government deals in certificates. This is Black's Law here. And we're going to come to where it says bond, right there. B-O-N-D, an obligation, a promise. So there's an obligation, a written assurance, and a promise already that something's going on. And then it says, is a document written and sealed. These documents, I'm going to show you here, have been written. And there's the seal. That's actually the document that I submitted to the Court of Queen's Bench. It's been bound, just add a U. This is a bond. And it says here, I'm going to show you guys, that this was a true certified copy and that this was filed at the Judicial Center of Edmonton, Clerk of the Court, December 9th, 2011. And this had red fox stamps on it to place a value and stuff. Needless to say, what happened was, in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it stipulates that every Canadian has the right to enter in, remain in, and leave Canada. And I said, Mark Randolph Simser is no longer a Canadian and has left Canada. I have nothing to do with you guys. All licenses, everything's been revoked. And anyhow, guys, there it is. And this is a bond. It's been bound. And, oh, sorry guys, I'll even give you the file number here because I just like to verify what I'm doing. A lot of people don't. And apparently we've got, it's 1003-07201. Once again, file number is 1003-072-201. We're going to see if we can capture this. And we're going to be getting warm. There we go. Sorry guys, that's the file number. There we go. So you guys can all see this, right? And even the Attorney General, they knew I was leaving Canada. There's their seal. It's under seal. So now what we've got here, people, is this. We're looking up bond, and it says an obligation, or in English, a bond is a document written and sealed, that was written and sealed, containing a confession of debt. There is a confession of debt, and we're going to come into this in a second. But I no longer deal with that debt because I am not a subject / citizen. And there's the court documents to say it. And it goes on here, so-and-so, QSIP number, social insurance, employee ID numbers, health and wellness numbers. Everything's been revoked. And that's there's the birth certificate number, social insurance number. There's the employee number, 2683-4930-69876. This is all being revoked back to the Government of Canada, people. and the Vatican and the whole 9 yards, okay? That's all been documented here. So now we're going to continue. There's a promise and an obligation to pay a debt. And it says, a written promise to pay money or do some act if certain circumstances occur. Say, for example, if the police were to turn around and say anything to me, and I don't care what they say or why they say it, I just say, listen, I have nothing to do with your legal services. I am not a Canadian. That birth certificate, the whole 9 yards, which is the enemy to the state document, has all been revoked and sent back. There's the judge's, the court clerk's file number 1003072001, etc. The whole 9 yards. So when I gave this to the court, if they didn't accept this written assurance because it's been certificated and stuff, well, that would have been fraud on the court. And that's a word that the court does not want to deal with, is fraud. And the only reason it'd be fraud is because I'm not a Canadian. I'm not a Canadian. And it's funny, if you look at the letters in Canada, you have, say, C is in chief, A is in fact, N is in negate, A is in fact, D is in debt, and A is in fact. So you have basically chief, fact, negate, fact, debt, and fact. That's what Canada says. Now, I know it's an old Turtle Island name, Kanata, which would mean I'm at the, I'm on it, and hence that would be a land-loving / natural term, more like Sanskrit, like I am and stuff, right? So you people can see where I'm going with this. And then it says, a written promise to pay money or do some act if certain circumstances occur or a certain time elapses. A promise that is defeasible upon a condition subsequent. And then it says, especially, an instrument under seal by which a public officer undertakes to pay a sum of money if he or she does not faithfully discharge the responsibilities of the office. So now the hot potato, because I'm no longer a Canadian and I don't deal with these people, if they were to come up and say anything to me whatsoever, even if they started claiming, oh, I assaulted people when I didn't assault them, or I spat on them, or they try to drug me up or anything, this indemnifies these people and puts the debt back in their hands because I no longer deal with the debt. So hopefully you people see where I'm all going with this, right? And so then it goes on to say, so now that I'm not an employee or an officer, right, it states that a public officer undertakes to pay the sum, and we've established there that at that time that was Menino El Hidalgo, right, here at the Attorney General's office. And then it goes on to say, undertakes to pay a sum of money if he or she does not faithfully discharge the responsibilities of office. The reason why they have to give this full faith and credence, that document that I just showed you, is because the full faith and credit is because they're bankrupt, and I don't put any faith in their money at all because they're just dead pieces of paper which are bankrupt and broke. So only you look at the words bankrupt, bank are up, add the T for title at the end, and they've all claimed title to a birth certificate. So I said, listen, I am not a person. So in that court document, it says here, who may apply for an Ontario birth certificate, and then it says the person who is the subject of the birth certificate. So the person who will be subject to the birth certificate. I do not agree anymore to be a subject to a piece of paper / legislation / birth certificate and be a subject to it, and we've established what subject was in prior videos. So now as well, being that I'm not an employee on that ship, it's up to the Attorney General's office to look after that matter, because that puts me outside of Canada. I no longer deal in legal, which was the oldest form of prostitution. And it says, the fact that an instrument is called a bond is not conclusive as to its character. It is necessary to disregard nomenclature and look to the substance of the bond itself. Well, I would say, being the fact that that came through the Attorney General's office and went through the Court of Queen's Bench, I would say that document carries some substance, and I'm informing, hence those are forms of what exactly I'm doing. So I am not applying, and no longer am I a subject who is going to be a person with a surname, take the S out, UR name, last name, and coat of arms and all that stuff. I just basically said, listen, this Mark Randolph Simja guy, he's leaving, he doesn't care, and you take all that stuff, and effectively, well, that was a a death certificate for that because I left Canada and I ain't coming back. You can always enter back into sin, but I will not enter back into sin again. So being that as it may, and then it goes on to say too, it says here, so they're saying that, but obviously I've got the highest authority in the land here, which is the Attorney General's office. The distinguishing feature of a bond is that it is an obligation to pay a fixed sum of money. These people, because I am not a Canadian and they are bankrupt, they are obligated to honor their own system, not me. And there's the wax seal, there's the ribbon, the whole 9 yards. This even indemnifies the sovereign Squamish government that I joined. I even rewrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and called it the Universal Proclamation of Rights for man, and it says every man shall, right? So you people can see what I'm doing with this. So no matter what, if they were not to honor this, that would be fraud on their system, and that's it, that's all. And, I'll be honest with you, by the grace of God, these people, as this document says, in the year of our Lord our Savior, AD 2011, they sure do honor their job, and I would like to say thank you to these wonderful people for doing as such. So we've established that, and pay a fixed sum of money at a definite time with a stated interest, and it makes no difference whether a bond is designated by that name or by some other if it possesses the characteristics of a bond. Well, we've established this has been bound. We just add a U, that's a bond. There you go, people. And this is all because they're bankrupt. There truly is no money unless you want to energize a piece of paper and energize their money, which is a fiction with your hard labor for nothing when you don't have to. These people have already insured their actions and effectively insured mine. And then it goes on to say there is no distinction between bonds and certificates. So this is the bond, and I don't know if you guys can see this. There we go, there's the impression. That's been certificated. So you can see what's going on here, people. Now, I've always dealt with the Alberta Rules of Court and that's how I know what's going on. So effectively, a written promise to pay money, so they will pay the money, or do some act if a certain circumstance occurs, like say maybe their authorities try to arrest me and put me in arrest when I'm not a citizen. That would just be sheer out fraud. And then it goes on to say that the distinguishing feature of bond is that it is an obligation to pay. So you're obviously gaining yourself and obliging and gaining yourself to pay a fixed sum of money at a definite time with a stated interest, and it makes no difference whether a bond is designated by the name or by some other. If it possesses the characteristics of a bond, it's a bond. There is no distinction between bonds and certificates of indebtedness, which conform, those are all forms, conform to all the characteristics of bonds. Now, people, I cannot keep this any simpler than this. So now you guys know exactly what I'm doing. So effectively, these people came along, and your parents registered and stuff, and even if they came along and the government drew up this in a birth certificate, but you never came along and applied for that or had that sent to you in the mail, then you would be civilly dead, and the government of Canada could not charge you legally, the oldest form of prostitution whatsoever. And how do I know that? Well, I know that because I like to back up what I do. I don't just do mindless things and run around like all these guys out there claiming, oh, well, you can do this and you don't have to pay taxes if you're a citizen. No, if you're a citizen, you've agreed to follow their laws. I'm not a citizen. I have agreed to follow the Creator's laws, right? And now, when I say I am that I am, even the Attorney General's office, look at this. They've insured their actions. They had to. And they've insured effectively my actions. But I don't care. I'm just being I'm being a good player. I'm just being, off ice kind of thing. This is the world passport that I drew, even just to cross through their fictitious port's power of attorney so they know what's going on. This and a peace treaty, and it states, for I am that I am, and who shall not legally be a prostitute / named. Then it goes on to say certiorari mandibus mandamus habeas corpus delicti quo warranto non-domestic non-do me stick without the USA, Canada, the Vatican, the United Kingdom, the United Nations. Then it goes on up here. And what we're going to do here, and it says, governments can only interact with fictions. And that comes from Cruden versus Neal, and we're going to see if we can get this in here, just for you newbies. There we go. Cruden versus Neal, right? Da 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 da. Right? You can see all that. And it says, inasmuch as every government is an artificial person. We've established what a person is. It's a dead piece of paper with names on it, which you cannot be a name, because how can you be a name? But if you rock up and agree to apply and to establish a legal identity, and then state that you are the person who is the subject to birth certificate and a statement of live birth, you would have to be a God-given idiot. So now that we've established governments can only interact with fictions, and inasmuch as every government is an artificial person, an abstraction, and a creature of the mind only, an artifice, the dead, a government can interface only with other artificial persons. The imaginary, having neither actuality nor substance, well, this is a dead piece of paper. What kind of substance is there here? There's not an ounce of it. And, sorry, we're just going to flip this back over. Having neither actuality nor substance is foreclosed from creating and attaining parity with the tangible. Don't you come up and try to do business with me when you guys are dead. These guys are all dead. Alberta's dead. Canada's dead. The private dominion of Canada's dead. They're all dead. So don't you try to interact with me when you're dead. That would be fraud. So you guys can see where I'm going with this. And that's effectively what it says. The legal the legal manifestation of this is that no government, as well as any law, not the Creator's laws, any law, agency, aspect, court, etc., can concern itself with anything other than corporate artificial persons. So do not agree, people, to walk up and apply to be a liar to agree to be a person, because then when you go to court, you are that person. So if you turn around and start saying that when you've applied and signed and agreed to be a person, and then you're saying you're not a person, that's fraud on your part, right? Because apparently you've applied, you've lied and said that you're a person, and that you wanted to create up here a legal, the old former prostitution identity, right? And then you can get into licenses, so you can have social insurance numbers. You can be a social insurance insurgent, insure yourself, because now you're getting into the world of lies by applying, and then you want to apply for a license, which is short of licentiousness. And look at the words, lie and then sense, C-E-N-T-E-S. Just change the letters up, people. So it's just that simple. So these people vouched for you, and if you never applied, you were free and you were not subject / a slave. So something else we're going to address here. We've established that, and I say I am who I am, and who shall not be legally named. I tell these people what I'm doing. Then I even put up a picture, people, and, you know, I state a few things in here, but I don't get fancy. But this is my habeas corpus, that I'm not a Canadian, and I am that I am. And there's effectively like a picture of my mugshot, just to be nice to let these people know who I am. Because the government, the Attorney General's office, was even willing to vouch who I was for what I was doing. So if they weren't, if the government of Alberta, I'm going to put it to you guys this way, okay? It's going to work like this. I claim some land here in Alberta. And anyhow, I'm not going to give the coordinates and stuff, doesn't really matter at the moment. And effectively, what's going on is, with that land and stuff, the government even knows what I'm doing, so I use them to be the debtor / slave to ensure their actions in case they did anything to me and started saying I owe them money. Well, I'd say, no, you guys owe the money. They've agreed to it. They're the debtor. I'm not in debt. I'm a creditor of life. I got back to the Garden of Eden and the naked trust and being naked, not covering my private parts with public / paper / dead corpse ation corporation / soldier, soul die, R for overhead, papers. And even here, I'm going to show you guys, like, this is the land we've claimed, the whole 9 yards. Man, everything I've did, these people know who I am. And that's that, whether it was like, listen, Mark Simser's no longer a Canadian, then I trademarked that name, and I gave that to my government. They have possession of that, and I legally am who shall not be named. There's our land, in fact. And I claim this. And if anybody ever rocked up and said, oh, you can't do that, I'd say, well, listen, apparently the Attorney General's office says I can. And they've even insured their actions right there. They've given full faith and credence to this certificate, which tells them that there should not be any problems with what I do. And now this makes the government the slave to me. Makes them my employees, effectively. Not that I like that term, nor do I want employees, right? I don't need that stuff. But you guys can see where I'm going. And again, this document probably says, you know, I who shall legally not be named, or I am that I am. And, you know, there's Exhibit A I showed you guys for the land. There's, you know, that's that, right? Because person/citizens can only own property. Well, I'm not a person/citizen/subject/slave. Red fox, or, sorry, a cute little porcupine stamp on here. You can't see it anyhow, whatever. And, you know, here's even the allodial land patent and stuff. Bam. You know what I mean? And I don't all owe anybody. This land was gifted to me and stuff. But effectively, you guys can see where I'm going with this. Everything I've did. So if anybody came up and said, well, you don't belong here, or you can't do this, I'd say, are you telling me I'm a slave? That'd be my first question. Are you telling me I'm a slave? Right? Because you can see, obviously, we're going to have to deal with this matter when I'm not a slave. And don't you please dare treat me like a subject and subject me below to a judge which sits on a pedestal as a dead statue who's going to come to life and bill me. No. Please, people, you have to see where I'm going with this. So I hope this really helps. I hope this explains that, because I'm not a Canadian and they're bankrupt and this is their debt. Well, if they want to hold the hot potato, let them hold the hot potato. But I'm not going to rock up to agree to be the person who is subject to be a birth certificate, which is a dead piece of paper, and we'll pretend this is the birth certificate, and then you have no rights in court whatsoever. You walk up and they go, oh, this person. That's the first thing a judge will say, and people go, well, I'm not that person. Meanwhile, they've applied to say that they're a person who is now a legal identity when they used to be the flesh and they were given grace by God. All the grace by God, and then they said, no, I like rights from man, but Lord knows what those rights will be. Maybe they'll call it fundamental justice, fund, F-U-N-D, fund amen, all. So obviously they don't fund citizens, you will be funding the men, right? So you're just an alien/enemy to the state. And then people are rocking up if they have applied to be a piece of paper / a name on a piece of paper, and if they do this, well, then, you know, and this is like my sovereign Squamish government card and stuff, you know. I've got cooler ones with the red and gold logos and that. But, you know, it goes on just to say, listen, I'm not even a Canadian, da-da-da-da-da. I even have police files with the police, thank God. They were nice enough to document that and do that, and I have to respect that. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm tired of people rocking up and lying and stating to be a legal identity / person when they're not, and which is fraud in court. If you are this person, acknowledge it as such, deal with the onus, the on you, which is the responsibility, pay those bills, and then turn around and say that, listen, you're leaving Australia, you're leaving Canada, and that you are not a subject / citizen to this debt, setting yourself as being on the surety ship. You are tied to a ship. So, okay, people, I'm going to leave it at this. We've established this, what it is. I pray to God you people know what's going on now, and there's no questions. And we'll leave it at that. Much love, light, respect out to all. Always cheers. Bye.